This is the philosophical dimension of the event. The theme is thought experiments. So we're going to have is 4 of our faculty are going to come and give short thought experiments. So the first is Bill Talbott.
This is a thought experiment with a little history. It's a thought experiment from Robert Nozick in his book Anarchy, State, and Utopia. And it just so happened that I took political philosophy from him in 1972 when he was teaching the manuscript of the book. So that was when I first heard this experiment. This one doesn't seem so surprising now because virtual reality is so common. But back in 1972, it was a really surprising thought experiment. Now, I see some of my former students here. My former students will be able to tell you that whenever I talk, you need to be able to raise your hand because I'm going to ask questions. So everybody here who is not paralyzed, will you please raise your hand? Oh, good. Okay, we're ready to go. Now, the next question is, how many people here are hedonists? Raise your hand. See, now, they're a little shy. They're a little shy. But don't be shy. In every group, there's some hedonists. How many people here are not hedonists? Now, you see, now I'm really worried because now I'm going to say, now you know a hedonist is someone who has no other goal in life except to maximize what I'm going to call their net. I believe more than half of the psychologists believe that everyone is a hedonist. So actually, if you're not a hedonist, that's a really important discovery. We've got to take you and introduce you to the psychologists. But they think you're self-deceived. So they're not going to be impressed. And actually what Nozick did was to come up with a thought experiment to try to test for whether people were hedonists. And so now I have to ask another question. How many people here are living a life of maximum net hedonic value? There could not be more pleasure in your life than the one you're living right now. Okay. Now, I didn't really expect anyone to raise their hand. But you know what's interesting? When I ask that question of undergraduates, suppose I have a class of 100, a few people will raise their hand. They'll say, I'm living. And you see, I have to tell you, when they do that, I say, thank you so much. You just gave me the biggest compliment I've ever gotten. So what you can see is that whatever it is that gives you pleasure, pleasure is just an experience. And so if we have a machine which produces the illusion of whatever it is that you like, you will get all the pleasure that you would have gotten. The thought experiment is a test of that. Because if you were a hedonist, you would be looking forward to hooking up. You would be saying, oh my gosh, please give me the opportunity. And see, Nozick, I mean, it's funny because, you know, we all sort of generalize from ourselves. Nozick thought no one would hook up. But actually, if I'm teaching a class of undergraduates, usually 5 to 10% hook up. Now that's really important to me because that shows there are some hedonists in the world. So in other words, it's not as though there aren't any. But also, the psychologists, and by the way, our whole culture just assumes that everyone's hedonist, that you have a choice. You don't have to be a hedonist if you don't want to. And so that's really the value of that thought experiment. And what's fascinating about it is that it's not well known in psychology, but it's actually the best test of this psychological thesis, which in psychology, as I say, is largely taken for granted. Thank you. Question. Yeah, that question is probably, how do I hook up? No, right, because look, here's the thing. You don't have to, I mean, if I had the machine, you would say, well, maybe I don't want to hook up for life, but let me try it out. Okay. That's why we do it. Any questions? Yes?
Did Nozick say anything about diminishing marginal returns? I mean,
diminishing marginal returns, but the funny thing is diminishing marginal returns to resources, but diminishing marginal returns to
dopamine.
What?
Dopamine, I mean, that's pleasure, right? I mean, the more we hit ourselves with dopamine, the less it's interesting.
Oh, but here's the thing. You see, the psychologist here is going to tell you, all I'm telling you is that this machine is going to give you whatever the maximum amount is. So suppose, for example, you get a hit of dopamine and then you need something to balance it out. The machine will give you the perfect balance. So in other words, it's not, I mean, he was thinking it was one long orgasm for 40 years. And that would be a problem for that picture, right? But imagine, you can easily imagine ways in which the machine could balance these things out so that all I'm going to do is get you the maximum, whatever it is. Now he's saying, well, heaven might still even be better because in heaven they don't have to worry about dopamine.
Well, I don't know what the maximum is, so I don't think a machine.
Yeah, but all you have to know is that it could be higher than your life right now. That's why I asked that first question. And boy, when you try the machine, don't get worried. You will see that it could be higher than your life right now.
Now, to me, we all are probably at least subconsciously suspicious of the fact that you're not hooked up to the machine right now.
But I'm not a hedonist. No. I mean, that's the thing, is that you have to think the only thing that I care about is, I care about lots of things. But I would try alcohol.
So I want you to imagine that there's a Ballard Cat Appreciation Society. And it has 5 members. There's 5 people who come to the Ballard Cat Appreciation Society, each with their beloved cats. And let's just say that 4 of the people fall in love with the 5th. Right, so they're all in love with the same person, and they're all deeply jealous of each other. And so all 4 of these people decide that they're going to get rid of the competition. And they decide that they're going to do it in an especially gruesome way. They find out about this drug. It's not fatal, but if you give it to someone and their cat, you'll paralyze both of them and they'll be in excruciating pain. And these 4 people are all so consumed with jealousy that they start going through with this. They get some drug, right? They start figuring out how to inject it into the other 3 rivals' coffee. Right? But then all 4 of them stop. Just they realize they can't go through with it. So we come along and say they confess. So we know what's going on, and we go to each of them and we ask, so why did you stop? Why didn't you go through it? We've got 4. The first one says, look, I realized I couldn't do it. And we say, okay, so why? They say, well, I realized that this is the sort of thing that God has commanded me not to do. When I realized that, I realized I couldn't do it. And we say, okay. So we go to the second. And we say, so tell us, what happened? They say, I realized I couldn't do it. We ask why. And they say, well, I realized that this sort of thing is illegal. And it's frowned on in our society. And once I got that, I couldn't do it. Okay. Then we go to the third, and we ask the same question. The person says, yeah, I couldn't do it. Why? Well, I realized, the third person says, that I wouldn't want to live in a world where people acted like this. I thought, what if everybody did this? And then I realized, oh, I wouldn't want to live in a world like that. And then I couldn't do it. We go to the fourth and final person. Say, why? They said, oh, I couldn't do it. We ask why, and they say, well, I thought about what it would be like for the people and the cats that I would paralyze and would be in pain, and how awful it would be for them. And when I realized that, I couldn't do it. Okay, so we've got these 4 people. So once again, right, the first person appeals to God's commands. The second person appeals to what's legal and what's accepted in society. The third person appeals to whether they would want to live in a world where everybody did this kind of thing. And the fourth person appeals to what it would be like for the person and the cats. So what Schopenhauer wants you to think about, or would want you to think about in this version of the case, is which of these 4 people really seem to show some true moral character. One of these people, Schopenhauer thinks, stands out as much better than the others. So I want you to think for a moment and think, which of the 4 would you pick? And say you have to pick, right? Who's going to get the morally admirable prize? And if you want, you can imagine this as, say that this 5th person is going to choose one of these 4 people, and the 5th person wants to go out with the one who's the most virtuous. Right? Okay, so again, God's commands, what's legal in society, and what's legal and accepted by society, living in a world where everyone did this, and what it would be like for the people they affect. Okay, is everyone ready to vote? And you only get to vote for 1. So, who votes for the first person? Got 2. Who votes for the second person, which is law and what's accepted in society? Okay, who votes for the third person, living in a world where everyone did that kind of thing? Okay, we've got 3, 4. And who votes for the fourth person? What it would be like for them? Yeah, okay, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, so that's what Schopenhauer wanted. Yeah.
I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah, please.
So isn't the fourth very fallible though? So how can you universalize that?
Good. So I think
It's easier. I raise my hand with God's commandments because they're real clear, right? There's only a couple of them.
good. Well, so here's
At least by some books. There's only a
yeah,
couple.
good. So Schopenhauer's view was, and I'll blame this on Schopenhauer, but I'm mostly articulating my view. Schopenhauer's view was, look, there's no guarantees. There's no simple rule that you can write down that's going to be a guarantee to virtue. So with your theological rule, you might get the wrong religion. Right? You might have picked up the wrong book. Right? You get the wrong rules. With rationality, Schopenhauer has some deep suspicions about rationality. So if you're supposed to do it in a Kantian way about universalizing, he thinks rationality much slippery and messier than we might think, and you might justify things that you wanted to do anyway. Also with compassion, which is what he thinks the focus should be, even compassion he thought was very rare, and most of the time what goes on when people look like they're compassionate is they're actually being selfish and dressing up their selfish motivations in some sort of compassionate form. So he thought, look, there's no guarantee. You could go wrong with any of these. Nonetheless, sometimes people can do the right thing for the right reason. And this thought experiment is supposed to give you a best case scenario for each of the approaches. And he thinks even with a best case scenario, compassion looks better than Kantianism or theologically based ethics or societally based ethics.
Now, the little tiny poster that I want to give you tonight, it really comes out of the philosophy of Nelson Goodman in one sense, and out of Colin's friend Manny the K on the other. And that is, let's imagine that there is a company that's been formed. Let's call it Mimesis, and Mimesis has got a new machine that can create super replication in artworks. So you've got an artwork like Mona Lisa or some other famous artwork, and this machine can replicate the molecules in the artwork at all levels. The surface molecules, the underpainting, the frame, everything, molecule by molecule, so you get perfect accuracy, and the product is indistinguishable from the original. You get this machine. I mean, God knows we're getting there, aren't we, with these 3D printers and so on. So this company can do that, and they apply to you for permits. Now, here are 3 permits that they've applied for, and you're a permit granting agency. And I've got to look these up because I can't do it. So first, they apply for a permit to produce 1 replica each of the Mona Lisa and 10 other very well-known works at the Louvre as insurance against natural disaster. The replicas are to be stored in a permanent underground vault and are not to be removed unless the originals are destroyed by calamities such as earthquakes or disasters, vandalism, nuclear war. That's the first permit they asked for. Just let me reproduce 1 replica each of the Mona Lisa and these others as insurance in case they get injured or destroyed. So now the company applies for a second permit. And this is a permit to produce 100 replicas of each of these works, again the same Mona Lisa and 10 others, to establish satellite museums in major cities and regional capitals throughout the world. And now the third permit that they asked for, they apply for a permit to produce unlimited replicas of the works and to announce their plans. They announced their plans to market the replicas in department stores for $14.95. Which of these permits, or all of them, would you grant? What's the right thing to do with the Mimesis proposal? Simple thought experiment. Any responses? Well, that's good. Now. Yes. Lauren.
So I'm just going to throw a wrench in that I throw in when I do a similar thought experiment teaching about environmental ethics.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between the replica and looking at the Mona Lisa in an experience machine for our first thought experiment?
Oh my.
So I'll just put that out there.
Yeah, that is a good question. So we compound things, don't we?
I think
So-
it comes back to this. If we think there's something valuable in the Mona Lisa itself, right, isn't that the thing that we value, and does it not matter if we make replicas, because they are just replicas. Just like the experience machine would tell us it's the Mona Lisa that has value. Yes, the experience is valuable, but that's a different kind of value. Isn't the value of the replicas kind of map onto the kind of value of the experience machine experience of the Mona Lisa?
Lauren's one of our wonderful teachers, and she's just been made the winner of a. Give me the name.
Integrated social sciences.
She's so we're delighted that she's going to be doing a lot of philosophy online for people now, in a very exciting way. So the really issue is there something special about the authentic original that is different in kind from the quality? I mean, you can have lots of good experiences, but it's not the authentic original that you can go to. And so there's something that says, well, should we make it attractive to keep the original and not reproduce it? Is it more fun to go to Disneyland or to Paris? You know, you got these same buildings, you can walk down the street and it looks like. Anyhow, you can see that these questions, little simple question like this, invites us to think about broad questions of value and evaluation and how we respond to art objects.